Hey everybody, welcome to the Elseworlds Exchange, a comic book show where we talk about something from the pop culture comic book world and then break it down for about an hour. I'm Sal.
I'm Joel.
So today we're talking about the recent development in censorship in America, where
Real censorship, not the censorship that the internet is always complaining about.
no, yeah, that was real. Yeah, it's actual, impactful, problematic censorship that you should protest against and fight hard to stop. So Art Spiegelman's magnum opus, Mouse, or Moz. I've never really known how to pronounce it. I've always said Mouse, but
Yeah,
I think
same.
we're supposed to. But it's a secondhand account of surviving the Holocaust and then surviving survivors of the Holocaust.
A soul-bearing story.
Yes, that could be diminished by those who refuse to look slightly deeper, though even then the art of Mouse shows you it is tackling the Holocaust, it is talking about fascism. Ironically, a book denouncing fascism is being censored.
Yeah, how about that?
So let's talk about specifically what's going on, because like the thing is, this is nothing new. Honestly, unfortunately, the idea of censorship, particularly of comic books, usually because of the medium itself, but also sometimes the subject matter itself as well, it has been censored or diminished by educational outfits or legitimate sources like newspapers, libraries, etc. And there's a whole litany of comic books that have been diminished by those who would be arbiters of culture.
Indeed. And this isn't even the first time Mouse has come under fire. I think in 2015, there was a thing, and then a couple of years before that, but it never like actively got pulled or banned from the curriculum like it is now.
No, in fact, it's actually funny how longer ago Mouse had been like taught in schools or used as an instructional tool.
We talked about it in our Comics in Schools episode, another episode of Elseworlds.
Indeed, but it won't be at this particular school in Tennessee. Let's talk about it. I've got a link to this article, particularly in the chat. It's from today.com. I'm sorry. I wish I could use a better source, but this is it, by Danielle Campoamor, who says, a Tennessee school board voted unanimously to ban the Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel Mouse.
And Eisner Award-winning, too. It's maybe the only work I know that has both a Pulitzer and an Eisner.
It's a tough act to follow, which details the horrors of the Holocaust. On January 10th, the McMinn County School Board voted 10-0.
That is fucking astounding. Really not one person? That tells me they didn't read it.
Yeah. 100% didn't read it, or that it makes me weep for the curriculum at the McMinn County School district, but removed the graphic novel from an 8th grade language arts curriculum, citing foul language, nudity, and copyright issues. And yet,
that last one is confusing.
Yeah. And copyright issues. Yeah. And yet we will continue to beat Catcher in the Rye to death in every 8th grade curriculum around the country.
Yes, God forbid we shake it up with something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more compelling, something that kids might actually want to read because, it's a comic.
Quote, I consulted with our attorney, Mr. Scott Bennett. After consulting with him, we decided the best way to fix or handle the language in this book, was to redact it. Director of Schools Lee Parkinson said at the beginning of the January 10th meeting, according to a meeting transcript. You were going to say something?
I was going to say yes, and let us not go into great detail about this. That's what has me pulling my hair out about all these complaints in this article. Could you be more vague?
Oh, I can. I'll use words like rough, objectionable language. What does that mean, rough?
Yeah.
To what do you refer when you say objectionable? He also goes on to say, considering copyright, this might go so far as to explain it, we decided to redact it to get rid of the 8 curse words and the picture of the woman that was objected to. By whom?
Again, also not a woman, a mouse. They're all anthropomorphic animals in this thing. It's not a real woman.
Right. Yes. This is amazing because I love that they consulted their attorney immediately, and that their attorney said, legally, you can get around it by citing copyright. I'm sure that was the legalese shorthand that got them around it.
Yeah, see, it's not our fault. We're not being weird and regressive.
No. Parkinson said 2 or 3 board members came by his office to discuss the book, and it's, quote, rough, objectionable language. So, okay, 2 or 3 board members came to him. One board member, Tony Allman, said in the meeting that the educators, quote, don't need to enable or promote this stuff. Citing the book's author's past history of creating graphics for Playboy magazine.
Oh, that pissed me off so much. Motherfucker, if that's the case, you better get Superman out of there too, because guess what? Schuster drew erotic nudes too. A lot of your favorite artists did. It's how a lot of artists today continue to make money. Get fucked, sir.
I have a feeling Tony Allman is not a big fan of art.
Yeah,
doesn't have a favorite art. Probably doesn't have a favorite book either. Unless it's Mein Kampf, allegedly. It shows people hanging. It shows them killing kids, he added, describing the depictions in Maus of true historical events. Why does the educational system promote this kind of stuff? It's not wise or healthy. Yes, it would be not wise to remind people of the true horrors of a fascist dictatorship or of a totalitarian government taking hold. Certainly, I'm sure that there would never be any depictions of censorship by well-meaning folks like the people of...
It's like, also, too, if that bothers you, are you going to start changing and redacting the history books yet? Oh, no, wait, you also do that as well, don't you? Oops.
I'm sure they do. Let's see here. Today, parents reached out to McMinn County School Board members for comment, but did not hear back at the time of this publication. Book critic Maurice Kreisman says Maus is a graphic memoir, meaning it's based on a true story and the experiences of the author's Jewish family during the Holocaust. Quote, it is a horrifying and disturbing and depressing. It also contains brief Maus nudity and curse words, Kreisman tells Today parents. How sad that the school board doesn't think young teenagers are strong enough or mature enough or smart enough to be able to handle a few curse words in very specific contexts in order to learn about real events.
See, I get the feeling that it has nothing to do with the strength of the students. I think students are very strong and resilient, as this woman said. I think this had everything to do with the teachers and probably the parents too, who didn't want to have to answer hard questions and wrestle with real issues.
And that's really where it all comes from, isn't it? I think that these students, these 8th graders, certainly possess the mental and mature capabilities that would dwarf that of their school board.
Indeed.
Quote, I'm kind of baffled by this, says the book's author, Art Spiegelman, 73. I've met so many young people who have learned things from my book. Today reached out to Spiegelman for comment in the wake of both his novel being banned and the Republic response. Quote, Art is overwhelmed with requests. A spokesperson replied, but as he gathers his thoughts, he wants to share this bookmark with everyone. And the bookmark is... depicting an image of one of his characters looking through a book, says, quote, keep your nose in a book and keep other people's noses out of which books you choose to stick your nose into.
Well said. If there's one like slightly positive silver lining to this, it's that Spiegelman is in the news again and he's being booked everywhere to talk and everything, and that's good if nothing else.
Absolutely. And the article goes on, and it basically takes citations from different educators and museum curators who go on to explain that like the Holocaust's atrocities need to be shown in like naked truth, so as to better understand the its impact, and
those
hopefully
who do not learn from history and all
are
that
doomed to repeat it. So it's like it's important, and its brutality is one of the most important things to express, because it needs to be real, it needs to be graphic, it needs to shock the reader who has been divorced from that time period for so many decades.
100%. You shouldn't be comfortable reading or learning about the Holocaust in any way. I don't know how they did it when you were growing up, but for me, they had us read that book Night by Wessel or Weissel. That was pretty freaking sobering. Again, had a rowdy ass history class there that by the end of that book, air sucked out of the room, as it should be, because people were actually thinking about it. And of course, they showed us Schindler's List, which is like the only time I've actually seen Schindler's List all the way through. And again, quieted the whole classroom, because how could it not?
No, it's true. It's true. If we can extract any kind of silver lining from this nonsense, it's that it's shining a brighter light on Do we go so far as to say corruption? Certainly, a lack of care for education. It certainly it shines a spotlight on those who would not be seen curating curriculum to, let's say, in the best of circumstances, avoid hard conversations, and at worst of circumstances, one can only extrapolate.
It underlines a hell of a moment in American history right now. And even me as a Canadian, like an outsider looking into it, I'm like, wow, there's a real like anti-intellectualism pushback happening in the States right now. Don't make me think about anything I don't want to. Don't make me read anything I don't want to. Don't make me do anything that might make me feel bad. Again, before we started, Florida passed today their White Discomfort Act. And I'm like, oh my God, really? This on the same day? Jesus.
Yes. Though the article was printed on the 27th, it is also came out on the same day as International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Fuck.
Because these people have no sense of irony.
No. And again, didn't bother to look that up, I'm sure, and didn't know, but they're deciding curriculum for other people.
Absolutely. Now, I having been an educator and having worked with school boards and having had actual relatives who worked on school boards, I can speak to this and say school boards are garbage, and that those who sit on them, it's not unlike the worst examples of sad little kings on sad little hills who are given a modicum of power and go completely bonkers over it.
We know what that happens, small amounts of power.
And in this case, it's the power to alter curriculum, redact notable works of art, and to censor the culture at large, or some aspect of culture that probably is not terribly well represented.
And that was also completely fine for like a decade before this, but only now is mouse a problem.
Suddenly, it's a problem. And I'm sure, and this happens, having worked in schools, having gone to school, I can say that this is, I can imagine a well-meaning student finding this book in their library, reading through it, being moved, and perhaps even motivated to move others with it, and bringing it up to their parents or maybe their teacher, and someone getting real uptight about it.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Because again, it's such a deeply personal book. Spiegelman is basically the main character asking his father about the time in the Holocaust. And yeah, if I was a kid too, I'd be like, hey, mom and dad, where was grandma and grandpa during the Holocaust? And again, depending on where, maybe you don't want to answer that question.
I don't know if Tennessee, particularly this county, is probably a hotbed for hidden former members of the Aryan race. But I can say that, the McMinn County School Board did issue a statement to try and assuage some concerns, some fears, some public discord. They said, quote, "One of the most important roles of an elected board of education is to reflect the values of the community it serves." Love when it starts with that, because it always is about to be. It's like saying, I'm not racist, but it's always just one of these it's coming.
It's kicking the ball down the hill. See, it's not my fault. I'm speaking for I'm just saying what everyone is thinking.
Yeah, I'm not stifling Jewish representation. My community wants me to stifle Jewish representation.
Stifle it, you see.
The McMinn County School Board of Education voted to remove the graphic novel. Oh, I'm starting to call it graphic novel, not stuff or garbage. Now, I've been educated by probably thousands of emails and phone calls, but this graphic novel mouse from the McMinn County schools, because of its unnecessary use of profanity and nudity, and its depiction of violence and suicide.
Ooh, hey, clutch them pearls a little harder, why don't you?
One should probably not tell them that real mice are constantly nude.
Yeah, I know, all time even.
Running around without so much as a stitch of clothing.
Your favorite mouse, Mickey, pants, no shirt.
Yes, and I would fear for those cat-owning people in the McMinn County who might see depictions of violence against mice. But yes, depictions of violence and suicide. Taken as a whole, the board felt this work was simply too adult-oriented for use in our schools. Too adult-oriented. Well, we do not diminish the value of Maus as an impactful and meaningful piece of literature.
Seems like you did. Seems like you spent several paragraphs diminishing it in McMinn County.
Yeah, Yes, I also noticed that this is signed by the McMinn County Board of Education. No one member is going out, putting their balls on the chopping block to
No.
take fire again, like they thought they were. And that's the thing, right? When you live, and that's one of the problems with culture right now, is that like when you live in a bubble, you tend to think that everyone agrees with you.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
So,
we see it all the time.
And when you get that comfortable, and a reporter asks you to comment on your wanton censorship, you might say something like, why would we ever let this garbage in here? It's all trash, and it depicts a bunch of gross stuff I don't want to think or talk about.
Yeah.
And then they say, are you a moron?
Yeah. What?
So
and then they get even more defensive after that because you threaten to shatter their worldview, which usually means they end up doubling down.
But we don't diminish the value of Mouse as an impactful and meaningful piece of literature, nor do we dispute the importance of teaching our children the historical and moral lessons and realities of the Holocaust. To the contrary. We have asked our administrators to find other works that accomplish the same educational goals in a more age-appropriate fashion.
It won a Pulitzer.
I would love to see what your age-appropriate depictions of the Holocaust might be.
I know, right?
Perhaps a coloring book or a connect the dots of Auschwitz. Maybe we could have some kind of a cartoon dinosaur explain Nazi propaganda. Though I'm sure their principal would probably do a better job.
And they probably wouldn't like the dinosaur thing either.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The atrocities of the Holocaust were shameful beyond description. It seems like you're pretty quick to describe or allow for description, but all right, it's beyond description. And we all have an obligation to ensure that younger generations learn of its horrors. To ensure such an event is never repeated, we simply do not believe that this work is an appropriate text for our students to study.
Again.
Well, that really clears things up, doesn't it?
For real. I mean, just God, to tell a guy like Spiegelman, hey, your personal soul-bearing story about your family and everything, we find it objectionable. And for a lot of the books that have been banned, that's kind of a running theme. Hey, your real-life story, you bearing your heart to everyone there, we find it objectionable. So stop.
Your genuine, true account of the Holocaust, or your father's account of the Holocaust, is just a little too graphic. It's a little inappropriate. Can you soften it a little bit? Can you dial it back?
Can you tone it down?
Why is it every time I see one of these Holocaust depictions, it's always got to be a downer, and it's so graphic? You know, I don't understand how one can depict the eradication of an entire race through rose-tinted glasses. Perhaps they could say something like, we're not going to teach the Holocaust to 8th graders because they're not mature or age appropriate to handle it. But instead, no, we're not diminishing it. We're not saying that it's inappropriate for them to understand. We're just saying this particular work.
Oh yes, with the cartoon mice is a little.
With the cartoon mice, way too inappropriate.
Literally by making it anthropomorphized animals, he is softening it. That's the whole point.
Right?
He's making it a little bit more palatable for you.
Exactly. But never mind that.
No, they didn't. I fully bet $100 none of them read this.
No, I guarantee you, the maximum amount of pages turned was done through a flip book-esque motion. I'm sure they definitely read the pages that were objected to. You know, the pages that depicted nudity, suicide, swearing. Heaven forbid.
Bunch of freaking what is it? I was gonna say Maud Flanders, but no, bunch of Goody Lovejoy.
Yes, they are Goody Lovejoy.
Somebody please think of the children.
Yes, of course. So that's what's got my knickers in a twist, is just this.
And how couldn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I get really upset about this kind of censorship, or censorship of any kind, but especially in a public school, a publicly funded. Generalized education. You are going to dictate what is acceptable
when it comes to learning history. And again, like you said, this is so bold-faced and so transparent, and also
Yeah.
real actual censorship, not the way that people on the internet normally complain about censorship. It's like, no, that was a privately traded company choosing to do a thing that it
Right.
couldn't do. No one was taking away. This is literally a group of people being like, we are taking this away from our children. They are not allowed to read it.
No, of course. So that's where we are. That's what's happening. I'm sure it's an ongoing thing because I would hope. I mean, it's eighth graders, so
Yeah.
I understand. They're not going to be quite as rallied.
No.
But
sometimes they are, though.
Yeah, but who knows? Maybe we'll see more of this story develop. I don't know.
There's certainly a hope too that, in classic teenager fashion, whenever
someone tells you can't do something,
the Footloose paradigm, when they tell you you're not allowed to read the book about the mice, maybe a bunch of them are going to seek it out now and actually read and be like, well, what was so bad they didn't want me to read this? And then maybe they'll actually learn a thing and be like, really? That's what they didn't want me to see? Jesus Christ.
I don't know. But yeah, so that's what's happening. And it's important for us to talk about it. We're going to talk about other banned comic books that have been banned for one reason or another. But I should also mention that, like, the reason why we're really harping on this is because it's important to talk about. It's important to shame. I think it's like one of those things where in today's culture, there is this expectation, this requirement to hear everybody out. And I think that it comes from a pure place. Everyone in the world has opportunity to a voice. Everybody should be heard. And while I agree with the sentiment, I also agree that one should not be immune to the consequences of
100%.
that expression. And in this particular case, one of the consequences that has been lost or has been stamped down over the years is when someone says something that is so objectionable, or someone does something that is so abhorrent and so antithetical to progress that it just gets into your craw. And we just kind of, in an effort to avoid argument and conversation, we just simply let it pass. And one of the things that is important is recognizing in a black and white kind of way when something is wrong, when something is just wrong. And what used to happen, and I hope it still occurs, is that we one way that we can educate and change that kind of behavior is by pointing it out and by shaming it publicly.
Absolutely. It's one of the last tools we have as a society to be able to publicly shame.
Right. Because here's the thing. Like, when I remember growing up as a kid and, like, someone saying something really inappropriate and, the group being like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And that kind of reaction is so formative for people, and sometimes it causes neuroses and it causes personality deficiencies, but other times it helps to teach people that ain't the way it always is. And in a constantly nichifying culture where we're all retreating to our bubbles of echo chambers, it's important for groups to say, yo, this is wrong.
Yeah, you gotta stop.
Messed up, and we're not going to do that.
Out.
So constantly, in this case, we're gonna do that. You're gonna be like, yo.
It's one of the few times where we can actually use our power on this show to say something meaningful and not just have fun pitches.
Yeah. Now, somebody asked, by the way, if this was in the state. No, it's not in the state. It's not in the country. It's not a universal ban. It's a ban from an 8th grade school. Like, it's a ban in a school. So it can be argued. One could argue, and it's one of those things I'm talking about where it's like, well, devil's advocate. We're talking about an 8th grade class in Tennessee, one county. But 10-0, the entire school board voted against its ratification, its continuation in the school.
And these things always have ripple effects, as we've seen with a lot of stuff involving boards of education just recently with other issues. If you give them an inch, they're going to ask for a mile. And don't be shocked if this kicks off a whole new thing when wingnuts in other states realize, really, I can get rid of books I don't like that paint me in a negative light. Cool.
Or even just things I don't care for. You're going to get I don't want to assume that the school board of whatever the hell county this is is made up of a bunch of Holocaust denying Nazis.
Yeah. You'd like to think that. We'd like to think better of our fellow men.
Right. I would assume it's just that they're ironically poorly educated.
Yeah.
And that they are inspired by their desire for comfort and and their need for control, which is still dicey and problematic.
At a sliding scale to evil, isn't it? You know, I've often said, you know, we have a thing in culture and our media of the well-meaning idiot. Oh, well, you know, he's dumb, but he means well.
Yeah.
Not evil and stupidity walk hand in hand all the time. They are their favorite bedfellows. They're like this. They love each other so much. Evil and stupidity.
Furthermore, I have found that stupidity or ignorance has been weaponized by the evil and corrupt.
Oh, yes, it has.
So now you have people who pretend to be stupid, who are in fact working against progress.
It's eerie, isn't it? Right?
So let's jump into a couple of super chats because they have a couple of questions and continue the conversation. Elizabeth Russell says, "Hey guys, I was wondering if you were reading Human Target, and if so, who do you think tried to kill Lex? I'm thinking it was Guy Gardner. I don't want to speculate because Human Target is one of them perfect comic books.
Is it?
It really is.
I'm so gun shy around Tom King, but when I hear good things like that and good things about his Supergirl, I'm like, am I going to get back in, or am I just going to have my heart broken again?"
Yeah. Jacob Mitchell, first time being able to catch you live. Thanks for all the entertainment you provide. Thank you, Jacob, for your support, and thanks for being here. Functorial says, "I first read Mouse in a college class on, quote, the great American novel. Ooh. We read Faulkner, Pynchon, Morrison, and Mouse. It was a verified classic." Verified. It's true. Not a bad list, and a great professor you had.
Yeah.
DC Guy 3, as a Jewish person, the banning of Mouse is utterly disgusting and barely disguised anti-Semitism. As the author of the book has said, these people want to show, quote, a more clean Holocaust. It's infuriating. Yes.
I bet.
Yes, it's there is a desire by parents and by educators to protect young ones from the horrors of reality. It's an instinct. It's part of human nature.
And you see it with slavery too. You see it with anything that's like too difficult for some people to really get their head around.
That's the thing. And it's one of those things where it's like, one must never be comfortable with the subjugation of any human being.
Absolutely.
Cam, going by these standards, I'm assuming books like To Kill a Mockingbird or Night are next on the chopping block. Absolutely shameful. Let me tell you something. The fact that the lawyer was quick to cite copyright in some ham-fisted attempt to say it's not censorship, I think 10-0. I don't want to say conspiracy because I don't necessarily believe in conspiracy theories, but I will say that if I were a jackbooted school board member who was looking to make my 8th grade classes a lot less problematic, or if I wanted to engineer cultural constructs in my school district and I wanted to ban like legitimate fiction, I might start with Mouse and see where it gets me. Hopefully this scared the shit out of them and made them knock it off. But the fact they're doubling down means also that in their district they have no reason to fear reprisal.
Yeah, you got to be worried about people testing boundaries and people trying to state precedent where it's like, oh, but we did this one, so now it's going to stop us from doing the next one.
Right. The cat lawyer will defend for treats. I'll start reading it even harder now. Humph.
Exactly, as you should. That's how you fight back against this. You read harder. I've actually seen a lot of good groups online. They're being like, hey, can we get like a Dropbox together for kids, like not just in this school district, but everywhere? Like, hey, here's the comics they don't want you to read.
Exactly. DC Guy 3. Also, let's try and buy the book and donate it to middle school and high schools now. Let's get the book in as many kids' hands as possible.
Absolutely.
I completely agree. So we'll work on that. I got some ideas. Kingsport Cal says, I did a book report on Mouse when I was in the 9th grade. My report opened the eyes of my peers to how cool comics can be. I also got laid in Tennessee. Nice.
Awesome.
Well, that's called a trifecta, my friend.
It is. You did it all.
Pain Hybrid. Been watching Joel since CBC and Sal since TWP, and I finally get to donate. Hope y'all are here for the foreseeable future. Thanks a lot, man.
Sure,
doing the show for a few years now, so welcome to the team. And Aaron Jefferson, what's next? Banning To Kill a Mockingbird? Let me tell you something. They've tried. Like, that book it's always on the chopping block.
It is. I feel like they probably fought that book more than just about anyone else. It thankfully always just manages to make it.
Yeah. Eric Santi reminds me when they tried to ban Young Avengers trades in Brazil, but the ban resulted in more Brazilians readers becoming fans of Young Avengers. That's great.
I remember that as well. Yes, that was a pretty big story there for a minute.
Lewis Cox, what's next? Harry Potter? I mean, probably.
They've also tried to do that as well.
Yes, because Harry Potter depicts witches and magic.
Satanic.
Yeah. Aaron says, Mouse was the first graphic novel I read in 9th grade, and it not only showed me the reality of the Holocaust in a new perspective, but also showed me comics are more than men in tights. That's true. Yeah. Mouse does a lot of heavy lifting.
Sure does.
It helps to make I don't think it makes the Holocaust more palatable, but it certainly gets it in hand. It gets first-hand accounts into more hands, because you look at night, you hear books are daunting especially for younger readers, and it's why Mouse is so important. You get it out there, you get it on stands, children pick it up, maybe they're shocked. You know what? Yeah. Maybe they're shocked by seeing Batman fight a mutant leader with pointy nipples and sharp fanged teeth.
It's using the art form in a really interesting way where, like you said, it can be more than just dudes in tights. We can tell actual history and real stories in an interesting way that you couldn't any other way.
Yeah. No, it's true. And Liam Orr, greetings from Scotland. I think the problem for these folks is that there isn't a, quote, good Nazi character like Schindler and the white savior character in novels about slave trade. It could be.
I never thought about that, but you're right. Yeah, why does Schindler's List never actually end up catching so much shit? Yeah, because there's, he's one of the good ones, though.
Yeah. How come I can't see myself in this? I don't know. It's messed up, man.
Or movies like Amistad, where it's like, you ended it right when the story actually continued to go on and go in an even crazier direction.
Right? Yeah, that's true. So yeah, let's talk about some other banned books, some other banned comic books.
I was surprised by many of these.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, there's some that I'm not terribly surprised by. Like, for example, I'm going to use this one out of sequence. Sex Criminals.
Yeah, obviously.
Fraction and Zdarsky.
They knew what they were doing. They called the book Sex Criminal.
Yeah, I mean, the implication of the title, then the subversive reinterpretation of that title through the context of the story.
Yeah.
The fantastical nature of it, the very open sexuality of the book, and it's it's fearlessness in its depiction of sexuality.
Totally. But again, definitely meant for an older reader. Definitely probably something not meant for schools. What's funny is not only did school boards fuck with Sex Criminals, but wasn't Apple and some of the bigger comic distributors fucking with them too over some stuff?
Oh yeah. No, that was definitely it was a problem for many of these publishers who are trying to publish all ages type content, or have to put together some kind of restriction. With comics, you just put a polybag on it, or it's on the honor of the comic book retailer to make sure it reaches the mature readers group it's supposed to be targeted towards.
You sell it in the back next with the smokes and the booms and everything.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like, and that's one of those questions, right? Like the mature readers label, it's got a rating on it.
Mm-hmm.
It is meant for a particular audience.
Yeah.
If McMinn County was trying to ban Sex Criminals from their 8th grade curriculum, I might agree.
I'd also be like, wait, you're teaching sex criminals in your 8th grade curriculum? What an awesome curriculum.
Yeah, whoa. What a forward-thinking curriculum.
Those guys sound cool as fuck.
Yeah, but I would be like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to see that curriculum. But yeah, again, it's one of those things where what is mature, what is for all readers? I mean, and I think that's just up to the child and the parents, right?
Yeah.
It's up to whoever is responsible for them to say, because I remember buying a video game, renting a movie, buying a comic book, there's ratings on them. It's up to the retailer to adhere themselves to the body of censorship that is in place, but also if they have a guardian and that guardian deems that child more mature, it's up for grabs. But yes, it was apparently the 7th most challenged book in 2016.
Sounds about right.
As it was banned not only from apps that wanted to reach everybody, but also apparently from libraries as well. That's where I have a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you should have a mature reader section. Everyone should have a chance to get there. And I've been to a library, well, not recently because it's been 2 years. I haven't been everywhere. But the last library I went to in Oshawa actually had a really great adult readers comic section. So they had like the Dresden Files and like stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But also it's yeah. No, in this case, I find it offensive because it's in a library. But the other problem is, of course, libraries don't have nuance in their graphic novel section. They're just
No,
like,
not at all.
so that's probably where they ran into their issue, where it's like, what do I do with this? Put it in the mature reader section. Mature readers for what?
Same thing happens with manga too. You know, there's always a story that happens where it's like,
yeah.
oh, my young child was reading The Big Titty Dragon Maid. Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, like, but that's why you have like curators of the library to know where to put it and make it available for the right appropriate audience. But that being said, I mean, like,
I'm sure the original Japanese Big Titty Dragon Maid sounds, much more floral and nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're missing the context, really.
You lose it in translation.
Yeah, it's one of those things. TB says, Second Coming is another banned book that comes to mind. There was pushback against that book before it even came out, if I remember right. Yes.
True.
I do remember that. I remember it also when it came out, it kind of just like fizzled.
Yeah, it was like, we thought the controversy would carry it further than it actually did.
Not so much. Eric Santi says, so I live in Virginia. Many conservative politicians got elected based on changing education plans and potential book bannings. I think this is the start of a trend.
Yikes and yikes.
If it is, and I don't want to necessarily jump to that conclusion, but I also don't want to dismiss it because it's important to recognize it. If it is the start of a trend of school boards voting unanimously, coordinatedly, to ban notable, subversive, or at the very least, honest works on true-to-life topics, I would say that our response to it was also equally heartening as to its disheartening, where people didn't let them, sleep a wink.
No, yeah.
At large, we were like, this is an outrage.
Evil thrives in darkness. Let us bring this all to the light.
Exactly. So, the Captain Coon says, might just be my schooling experience in Canada, but none of my English classes did comic books for the dedicated class novel studies. It makes me feel like comics are still looked down on in schools. You're absolutely right. And it's one of those things, when I was a kid, comics were never taught. Not at all. Weren't even a discussion. The teachers themselves didn't want to teach them, so it wasn't an issue. Like, I read comics, I tried to bring them into the curriculum, or at the very least present them to my teachers who were not interested. So, like, it's generational. And it's people who have been have normalized. As culturally we normalize comic books, so too will it be represented in our education systems and with our, like, bodies that are arbiters of education or culture.
The closest I got, because I'm a couple years younger than you, so I was in school a bit longer, and also like Captain Coon, I was in Canada. They did a fun thing for my media studies class where it's like, okay, we're gonna do a unit on adaptations. So everyone pick a book. And they're like, yes, that includes comic books. So you can have your Watchmens, you can have, whatever is, based on a comic and do that. And one of my friends actually did Watchmen.
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember reading Watchmen when I was in college and, like, not really appreciating it. Like, it took a while. And I think it's because you can enjoy Watchmen, but I think you need, like, some kind of context about what it is. Like, maybe earlier on when, like, there was less, like, genre pushing work publicly available.
Definitely.
But now you need, like, it's like when people say, like, oh, Dark Knight Returns, like, who cares? And it's like, whether you like it or not, like, the time from which it came, it was shocking. And it was reacting to like a cultural representative of Batman and that their concept of what that character was. Culturally speaking, we need to destigmatize comic books. We need to do it by having we need to do it across the board. We need to do it culturally. And part of that,
especially now when every of like the top rated movie and TV show in video game is based on a goddamn comic. It's part of culture now. You can't escape it. Iron Man and Batman are as important as like friggin' Robin Hood or anything else.
This is true. I mean, they are. But the IP is a proven financial benefit, but it's not a proven cultural icon in the same respect, or at the very least, if they are, the movie version is, or the cultural concept of that, like Batman. Not everyone who knows Batman has a favorite Batman story.
True.
So we need to destigmatize comic books culturally across the board. And the way we do that is by making them readily available,
Yeah, that
It's
helps.
by not putting them in the same category as, like, I don't know, is by putting them in the same category as regularly available fiction.
Yeah.
And just letting them stand on their own. Also,
Absolutely.
it wouldn't hurt if, like, advocates existed, better advocates. When I say better, I don't mean that the advocates we have aren't better, but like Art Spiegelman, who's only 73, should or 71, I don't remember, he's in his 70s, should has been speaking on about his books for years. He'd be a great ambassador.
He's done more probably in the last like 48 hours than most other people have done in years.
Right, it's true. And we need like some kind of we need some kind of better set pool of advocates.
We need another Stan Lee. I think we're still feeling the hit from that, because he was a guy who you could put on any TV show, any talk show, any newspaper, and he would talk to you, and he was just so good at it, wasn't he? At selling comics.
He was a good carnival barking salesman. Like, he was good at his job. The question is, like, what do we need now?
Exactly.
So what's it called? Patrick Supsick says, reverse of the topic, but The Dark Knight Returns 2 should be banned.
Agreed.
I disagree. No art should be banned at all, regardless of your opinions about it. I will be doing another back issues on The Dark Knight Returns 2. It's going to be very different. I haven't shot it yet, but I'm going to be getting into it.
Looking forward to it,
because I think it deserves another look. Any piece of art deserves another look.
And you can just talk about it endlessly, too. It's like one of those watershed books.
It's true. Mina Qwerty, all this really boiled down to parents refusing to take an interest in their kids' hobbies, be it comics, movies, video games, and blaming others. This is a school board. The parents didn't champion this. There was no, like, set petition from the parents. This is just the school board electing themselves to make this decision. But I do agree parents should be more active in their children's lives. Joshua Vaughn, the mouse ban reminds me of Asimov's quote about anti-intellectualism in America. Well, it ain't wrong. I mean, like, we're having a resurgence of that in a big bad way.
That Asimov quote is getting a lot of mileage the last couple of years.
One book that I remember being on banned lists, I remember when it came out, and never understanding it. I still don't. It's Jeff Smith's Bone. Yeah,
you're a big fan of Bone, big proponent of Bone, pro Bone.
Love Bone, pro bono. Love Bone. It's a great, I'd call it a young adult fantasy series.
It's so cute. Who could have a problem with Bone? Look at the little guy and not smile.
Yeah, there's characters who smoke.
He's smoking old Disney cartoons and stuff, too. Friggin' the Flintstones hawked Winston cigarettes back in the day.
Oh, I agree. Oh, no. Well, yeah, but they don't show it anymore.
No,
but they say that apparently, there's depictions of alcoholism, of smoking, of calling it politically and racially offensive. I don't know I don't know where the hell that comes from.
That's an odd read.
But I don't know where they're getting it from. I think I think one of the main headlines, one of the main understandings of all of this, it all comes from a lack of education. It comes from a lack of understanding,
lack of media literacy.
Media literacy is so important in today's world, and
so few people seem to have it. I bang my head against stuff all the time.
Yeah, anyone who would try to ban Mouse, Bone would probably never looked at it.
Yeah, of course not.
And that's really what it is. They go, like, I can imagine someone who's looking to I can't imagine what a rough job. Like, if were I on the school board and one of my idiot colleagues says to me, like, this thing here has profanity, nudity, and graphic depictions of death and violence, and we need to ban it from our school, I'd have to look at it.
Absolutely.
And I'd have to read it, like, cover to cover, to understand. Yeah. Like, and that wouldn't even be a moment's thought for me. And nor would it also be a thought to ban it. I'd be like, the first reaction would be like, no. Now let me see this. Like, first of all, we're not going to do that. Secondly, give me this.
Due diligence, man.
Just takes. But Bone is one of those things where it's like, I think Bone should be like the poster child for comic book banning, because it has been banned. It has been removed from banned lists. It has been the site of controversy, and it is the most inoffensive comic you could ever read.
Absolutely.
So just straight up,
really
like, and it proves like nobody read it when they banned it.
I felt really happy the last time I was out in Victoria. My younger nephew there had gotten something from the library, and it was a Bone collection.
Hey!
Like, oh, he's reading Bone. Nice.
Yeah. Just Weggy says the national agenda of the RNC is to push these school boards over masking, CRT, and censoring books. It isn't just comics getting targeted in the schools, and it's classic American conservatism. Look no further than the CCA.
It does feel like a many-headed hydra now, doesn't it?
Yes, I appreciate your comment. Thank you so much for your support. I will say that I want to keep it relegated to just the comic thing, like,
because if not, we'll be going in a million directions. I
don't want to lose sight of the conversation, because like, while, like, let's say, and I don't want to say one way or the other, but let's say in this case that it's part of some grand, like, strategic maneuver of chess. All we need to do is kill one of these things, and the whole house of cards topples. So, like, in this particular case, book banning is so demonstratively wrong.
Oh yeah,
it is so morally repugnant that that it takes much more hardcore maneuvering to justify. The statement from the McMinn County School Board is so impotent and pathetic that it only leaves itself up to further criticism.
Oh God, yeah, hell yeah.
So in this particular case, what we can do is we can rail against it in this particular subject
with our small amount of power from our own sliver of the internet.
I'm talking to you, like, you watching, like, you have this power by morally standing up to that level of injustice, and encouraging others to do the same. Scuba J, our school library is a big deal in the U.S. My schools didn't have libraries. We just had public library or to buy our own. Our school's ban's a big deal. Okay, so when I went to school for 11 years, from pre-K to, like, whatever, we had one library for the whole school. And that library was woefully understocked.
Canadian school system, mine was a bit bigger, but I was from a small town, so it was a small town school library.
I was in a small town, and my library was pathetic. We had a well-meaning librarian and no budget, so I understand. But regardless of whether your school had a big library, no library, school bans are a big deal. School bans are the biggest deal. And when I say that, I don't mean it's more pressing or more, like, impactful than the environment or, alien invasions. I'm saying that, like, school bans need to be treated like a big deal. We need to get all upset about school bans because of its disgusting approach to
slippery slope nature. And also, for a lot of these kids, a school library is the only way they're going to be able to read these anyway. So that's a hell of a thing.
School libraries, public school is one of those very pure, like, ideas. It's like the Bill of Rights, living documents. It's like the Constitution. It's one of those things where we engineered this concept of everyone has the right to an education, and that education need to be publicly funded because we believe our population needs to be educated.
Yeah.
And when there is an attack on schools, when it comes to whether, and I have the same problem with school shootings, like, where I'm like, there's a whole thing, and I'm not going to get into it because we're not talking about that, and I don't want to lose sight of the conversation. But, like, any attack on schools, whether it's metaphorical, spiritual, conceptual,
you're attacking the bedrock of society.
You are attacking the bedrock of society. You are attacking, like, how many people, for good or ill, were influenced by how they were formed in school. So many. And schools need to be a safe haven that provides education, and not someone's version of it. Education, so that you can define your definition of what education is.
Because educated people do better.
School bans are a big deal. They are, and we need, when they come under fire, when schools become the subject of an attack, we need to get really upset. Like, we need to get upset like there is, like, a big problem, because it's the only way anyone's going to pay attention. It's the only way we're going to get anything done, because people think, well, schools are an institution. Maybe I didn't really have to. Maybe I didn't have to work very hard to get what I wanted out of school. Maybe whatever your individualized experience is, it is irrelevant to the fact that schools need to be preserved, and that preservation is really important. Kevin Kruger says, as my granddad used to say, "What a bunch of schmucks." Agreed.
Well,
you're right.
said.
That's such a fair thing to say. Max M. The problem is people without media literacy read the pictures and not the story or the themes. True.
Well said.
True. But I'm willing to give these chuckleheads the most modicum, the smallest modicum of the benefit of the doubt, where they've at least read the Sunday Funnies. They know how to read a comic.
Yeah.
The cavemen made comics. You can read a comic book. Cam says, I took a college course on Watchmen during the last election, and needless to say, it was proof of a concept. We need challenging, uncomfortable art. Agreed. Just regardless of your political leanings, uncomfortable, controversial art is important. It's like why art is considered to be art, because it challenges, because it does a job. What's it called? Matthew Terlaga says, banning Mouse for nudity is ridiculous. It's like when that one issue of Spider-Woman was banned for being too sexual. When she doesn't even take her clothes off, she's just in a suggestive pose on the cover. Yeah, that was an interesting controversy that I'm glad was had publicly, because what's the issue? And it's
was that the Milo Marinara thing?
Yeah. That was the Italian artist one.
The guy who is known for doing erotic nudes was hired by the company. What do you expect he was going to do? Yeah, that's a weird one.
No, it was very weird. And interesting insight from both camps, by the way. That was one of those I'm learning a lot. Eric Santi, there is also Persepolis, graphic novel about a Muslim girl in Iran and how U.S. involvement impacts her life. Yep, that's also a number. I can imagine that one. I can imagine if the McMinn County School Board discovered Persepolis. They'd be we got to get this thing the hell out of here before
their heads would explode. Yeah, I very much see that book as a spiritual sibling to Mouse in a lot of the same ways. And I think that book came under fire because of graphic violence, which again, if you read the book, it's not graphic at all. Again, it's like paper dolls.
Yeah, exactly. So like you said, Persepolis, the second most challenged book in 2014. Apparently, there's a lot of. I could have told you that this is going to be added to
and they made Persepolis into a movie, for crying out loud. You could teach the book and watch the movie.
That's true.
And the movie won a bunch of indie film awards.
It did. So in this case, it was trying to they tried to ban it in Smithville, Texas. And parents opposed Persepolis. They called it Islamic literature. The irony, of course, making a clear statement against Islamic fundamentalism. But yes, by the way, in this case, this is the parents having a problem, which it becomes a conversation when the school board just comes in and goes we've made a decision. Pass. Obviously, Sandman has been on the public banning list for a long time, since '89.
Gaiman has a lot to say about this Mouse thing if you check out his Twitter, as he should, because as we know, he's been in that hot seat himself many a time.
It's true. In this particular article, responding to a letter from a teenager dismayed that their library would refuse to purchase volumes of the series, he wrote on his website, quote, I suspect that having a reputation as adult material that's unsuitable for teens will probably do more to get teens to read Sandman than having the books ready and waiting on YA shelves would ever do. Yeah. I disagree with that sentiment, but I appreciate the wit and humor he used to say it.
So classic Gaiman, even his responses.
Just it's an attempt to say, well, just because we lost doesn't mean that we've lost. And in this case, I say, no, works that challenge must be on shelves, because otherwise, where else will you get them? You need to remove as many barriers to entry for works that challenge, because where else are children, adults, young adults going to find them?
Gotta wonder if that'll be relitigated again now that the Sandman show is coming out now, which means there'll probably be more interest in Gaiman's work.
I'm sure you'll see Gaiman's name pop up as the show becomes more readily available. Saga, another one, which again, it's one of those things where it's No duh.
They brought that, one of the problems with that for being anti-family was one of their big reasons for it. I'm like, anti-family, the whole thing's about family.
Right, but not my family.
Yes, not my normative family. I don't like it for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Homophobia, problems with like depictions of violence, sex. Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where it's like right time, right place. You know, like, do I think that Saga needs to be on the shelves of like every middle school in America? No, it's not marketed for children. And
it's an adult series for adults.
An adult series for adults or young adults. It's supposed to be like for teens and adults. Again, but it's one of those things where it's like making it available or making it known allows for the audience to find it, and the right audience to find it. I think it's really important for discoverability, for kids to challenge themselves, test the fences.
Oh, definitely.
I remember learning how to drive, and my mom was really, really protective of me. She's afraid of driving. I'm sure she would argue the opposite, but just sit in the car with her for 30 years and I'll tell you. But she's afraid of driving, and she doesn't, and her parental instinct was to protect you from that. And so as a result, I never was given the opportunity to drive on the highway. Right. So I took those opportunities. Like, I had to carve out those opportunities outside of my given opportunities, right? Like, when she's like, let's go driving, it'll be like, okay. And like, if it was on the highway, it was like under really unsafe conditions, because it'd be like, no, you have to be sure of yourself when you're driving on the highway. But like, discovering that for yourself, carving out, that's a microcosm, and it's not a really directly related example, but it's about when you're young, when you are hungry for information, when you're hungry for learning, when you need to know. That opportunity will be available one way or another
for your tank to be filled.
Yeah, and it's important to make it as safe for them as possible. Like, let's say putting Mouse in an 8th grade school library so that an 8th grader, an inquisitive 8th grader or 7th grader, picks up Mouse, looks through it, sees these images that they've never seen before or that they would never have imagined, that shatters, or at the very least penetrates, the world that has been curated for them to protect them from the realities of life. For them to say to their parents, what is this? What am I looking at? Challenging their concept of what reality is, or challenging their concept of what safe and normal is, so they can have this dialogue. And like, don't you see, ladies and gentlemen, how like that opens up, it's a slippery slope, but in a good way, where it's like, it not only does it allow for the child to reach for something and have this optimism or this concept of not knowing what they're going to find.
Yeah.
For books, opening dialogue with their parents so that they can feel safe to talk about controversial subjects with their parents, something most young adults can't or don't.
Which is a shame.
And also, of course, allowing new ideas or old ideas that are deemed, problematic today to penetrate their own worldview and inform and contribute to it. So there you go. Anyway, next, the Killing Joke. Killing Joke's one of those books where I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, it's a Batman book.
It's pretty hardcore, though, in a lot of places. There's a lot of
hardcore. It's pretty subtle, though. Like, there's, like the implied rape of Barbara Gordon. That didn't occur to me until the conversation was broached years later.
And I mean, like, it's also one of those things where it's like, well, Alan Moore doesn't even like that one anymore for all the reasons that they're stating. And if the author agrees with them, like,
right? Like, it's like Holy Terror. Like, should we, like, what about Holy Terror? Because Frank Miller also is like, I do you see what I was trying to do? But like, I don't agree. Like, I failed at it. Like Miller has said, I think at least once or twice, that like he kind of that was a failure.
He's kind of walked back. I mean, it certainly speaks to the zeitgeist of the time that it was written, even if it is the uglier reactionary zeitgeist of the time.
Right, but that's why I don't think Holy Terror should be banned, because it's like it starts a conversation, and that, like I remember Mein Kampf was available in my school library in high school. Really? And it's like not because it was used as a recruiting manual, because there's no way you're going to get that book without also getting the context surrounding it.
Absolutely. I believe in my high school history class, we didn't read the thing, but we read excerpts from where it's
Yes.
like, okay, let's hear what this crazy chuggernaut had to say in
Yeah.
his own words.
Right. It's not about and I wouldn't necessarily be like, you got to read it. It's a page turner. Like it's one of those things where it is understand where it came from and why it was written, and you know, and it helps to inform, you know, because like hopefully you read it and you go like, holy shit,
This guy had a couple screws loose, didn't he?
yeah. But like Holy Terror is one of those things where you're like, what the hell was this? It's like those you know, like those anti-Nazi propaganda cartoons that Disney made. Like there's this crazy Donald Duck cartoon where
I know the one.
Yeah, the In the Fuhrer's Face song. And what's funny is how like Donald ends up like dreaming that he's in, you know, Hitler's Germany, and he's surrounded by all these flags, and then he wakes up and he's in America, and he's surrounded by the same equivalent of flags and accoutrements, but it's American, and it's like, but somehow that's better. And I don't listen, it was better, but I'm just saying, like, but it's like there's something.
It's
there.
like, oh, were they trying to say something there? Was there like a subtle underpinning here about nationalism?
Nationalism, yeah.
Even back then, they were thinking about that.
I mean, like, it was Disney, so probably not.
They probably did. I mean, shit. I mean, Walt basically turned his entire operation into a propaganda machine at the time because the studio was sort of in the toilet. That's what kept them going for a couple of years.
Yeah, but in Killing Joke, it's like, put it in high school, like put it in a high school library. Who gives a shit?
I could take or leave that one. That's definitely like, okay, yeah.
I can't imagine it being banned. I can't imagine it being like
restricted. Put it in the back on the Mylar bag.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Like one of those things you got to ask for.
Yeah, because I don't like. Is it saying anything? Like, I don't know. Probably like about the characters. Yes, it's about saying it about the human condition. Like, not really.
One bad day, but I mean, I'm sure there's other books that say the same.
I would hope
thing
not, because if Joker's right, then like we're all screwed.
Yeah, really. That all it takes is one bad day to make you into a murderous clown maniac.
Exactly. Like, come on. Obviously, Watchmen, one of those things we talked about a little bit, but I can imagine Watchmen's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I could see like most school boards banning it because they just don't, because they don't get it. Because comics, like if comics were like, okay, so Quentin Tarantino's universe, right? Like when he made Inglourious Basterds, apparently, you know, like Kill Bill's a movie in the Tarantino universe.
Yeah.
But like Pulp Fiction really happened. Inglourious Basterds is apparently supposed to be like what happened. You know, like
it's real history when it diverted.
That's real in the Tarantino universe. And like, I think the idea is that like, because such a crucial moment in American and like world history took place in and around a movie theater, that like movies became like the international language for most people, which is why like people act and violent, and in such a violent, bombastic way, like violence became normalized and stuff. I would love to imagine a reality where comic books had the same treatment, where comic books where comic books became a shorthand that culturally people talked about, and as a result, you would never see Watchmen be banned because people understood the context that Watchmen needs to exist.
It'd be nice.
And that's I think the end game for us, right? Like that's the end game for making comics culturally aware and making them like synonymous with like literature and arts and movies and stuff. It's like comics need to be normalized.
In the same regard.
Yes, we need to normalize comics so that when someone says, "Oh, we're banning this comic book about mice in the Holocaust," it isn't just a hand wavy. Okay,
you have more people standing up and be like,
"Are you talking about mouse?"
Yeah, that's real literature.
Yeah. No. Why the Last Man? That's funny. Like,
yeah, I was surprised that one too. Really?
Yep. What's it called? In California, a student, of course, protested it, called it pornography.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of those things where it's like,
that sounds like one busybody got like a lot of traction on a slow news day.
Well, I love kid protests, like high school, college, child-driven protest. It's so educational for them,
definitely,
to do it, because they need to learn how to organize. They need to gather their thoughts, find a soundboard, pick a topic, explain that topic, express it in shorthand, like, and get their message out there, and deal with obstacles to that, and deal with the pushback, or at least the contrarian argument. And in this case, a 20-year-old college student being like, "Why Last Man's pornography?" Any reasonable argument would destroy that assessment, because they've read it and they have the historical, or at the very least, the literative context to express it. But like, I don't decry a student trying to get it banned. I think that it's like, okay, but like, you have the same voice as everybody else. You
do you, but don't be surprised when this blows up in your face.
Right. The problem, of course, comes in the form of like, oh, does that mean, like, but what if they're a tool of an administration that's looking to ban it? Or what if they get the ball rolling and discover an underpinning of like,
becomes a bigger monster than you could ever have imagined.
But like, that's the trade-off for democracy, right? Is that sometimes your population is full of assholes.
Yeah.
And you inherit that. Like, the benefits of democracy also have their own negatives attached to them.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Kingsport Cal says, do you think they'll ever ban V for Vendetta? I know for a fact they've tried.
I'm shocked it's not on the list, actually.
Yeah, it's not on this list, but it's a CBR article. So
I'm sure it is.
It's garbage. But like, but with respect to V, I remember V being a problem. I remember when the V movie came out, and it was like, it didn't cause much of a stir as much as I expected. But I do remember them being like, they're blowing up buildings. Like, this is shades of 9/11. And I'm like,
they're clearly talking about the Bush administration. Like, well, they were talking about something else, but the fact that you can superimpose the Bush administration on there should tell you.
Maybe you should think about that. Like, yeah. When you see someone drawing a picture of a clown and you go, "You're drawing me."
Yeah,
maybe think about that for a minute.
Boy, that's a good one. Put that on a shirt.
So, in this case, I don't know. We're kind of out of time. We've reached the end of our list, or at the very least, we talked enough about like examples. But like, one of the undercurrents of these examples is like, anyone trying to ban them clearly didn't either. It came from either two places, but all of them connected to a lack of understanding.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Either they didn't read it or they didn't get it. But either way, it was ignorance. Ignorance is the lifeblood of banning art.
Yeah.
And so, the takeaway for this is to challenge ignorance and to fight against it, even in your own mind. If you don't understand something, or you react viscerally to it, ask yourself why. And don't be afraid by that. What's that?
I said, I wish more people did that last part.
Yeah. Ask yourself why, and like, argue with yourself, like, challenge those thoughts, challenge your own worldview. Like, I've been in many different places in my mind, politically, philosophically, spiritually. Like, I've been all over this crazy world in my mind. And, and I'm open to new schools of thought, and it's important, to be that way and to condition yourself to that point. But it doesn't come from being closed-minded early on. It doesn't come from having a lack of source material to draw from at an early age. And that's why it's so problematic when you try to ban books from schools. Alden Talbert says, what's the world coming to, man? Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, like,
asked that a lot over the last 2 years.
The thing is, it's the same world. Like, for me, we're in the same place we were in 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 25 years ago. The problem is just not really a problem. It's the difference is the tools are getting more specialized. Like, the tools that we all have at our disposal, the enemy, and like the enemy of progress, the enemy of intellectualism, the enemy of art is, has the same access to, to the same tools that we do. And it's up to us to like know how to use them and how to communicate effectively and block that kind of crap when it comes up.
Absolutely.
Eric Santi, could you imagine someone trying to ban all X-Men just because of the mutant allegory?
Jesus.
It's coming. I mean, the fact is, like, a Spider-Man book was banned because, like, there was sex in it, and it's
for
like
totally nebulous reasons,
right? And it's like, look, those books were all ages, and they had Mary Jane and Peter had way more sex in the younger books for everybody that were available in 7-Elevens than they were in the 2000s.
This Krakoa book has mutants living together in a hippie commune with free love and free healthcare.
And that's part of the problem, right? Because like in this particular case, like one can dismiss it because comics are so dismissible. You go like, well, you know, comics became leftist propaganda a long time ago. Like, or yeah, comic books became like a tool of the blah, 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 you know, since forever. Or
insert here.
Over the last 10 years, comics got so blah, blah, blah that you can't be surprised. And so we'll just dismiss it all. It's like, yo, it's not the problem. What's it called? Anakin Skywalker. Good to see you. Hope you recover well.
Indeed.
I do remember in high school I did a report on the comic called Punk Rock Jesus, and I shocked my English teacher that it was a graphic novel about the ignorance of corporate America and even public education in America. Yeah, man, good book, and good work bringing it to people's attention.
Absolutely.
I remember trying to get comics in front of people, but like. People weren't ready. I didn't do it right. You know, my passion was there, but my education was limited, or my articulation, you know, and so it's important to have like groups of people who agree, or at the very least, like have this kind of like belief about like art, and so that you can borrow and work together to engineer a kind of like collective response. Because when you just let things go all slipshod, you send a lunatic to Fox News to argue your point, and you make your subreddit go private. Scarlet Hottie, banning art is never cool, and half the time it ends up having a cooler connotation in pop culture because of the forbiddenness. That's true.
Absolutely.
That's true. And I like that. I do agree that art requires obstacles. It requires like pushback, but that pushback should never come from government.
Yeah.
It should come from culture and people, not from like a governing body. Like make it available. And like you can let people go like, you're picking up that book, but like you'll pick it up.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us, and especially thank you to the McMinn County School Board of Education for being so stupid and for being so ignorant and pathetic. Hopefully, you will get that operation to extract your heads from your asses at some point. I hope it is from public scrutiny, and more importantly, I genuinely hope it's from your student body and your parent body who recognize the merit of a seminal work like Mouse. I'm going to make sure I send a personal copy of Mouse to the McMinn County Schools.
There you go.
And I will also be contacting my schools that I went to and I'm actually going to do that right after the show and contact them and see if they have a copy of Mouse. And if they don't, I'm going to donate a copy to each school library.
That's a really good idea. I should call my local school because it's actually not that far.
Yep. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have a school or a library that matters to you, reach out to them and see if they have a seminal work that you believe matters to the population. Could be a Mouse, could be anything.
Yeah.
And if they don't, grab one and ship it over to them from Amazon. Because, we are in charge of not only our own government, but also of we're in charge of what is accepted in art. It's up to you. So, like take that opportunity and own it. Like I've got an opportunity where I have a little bit of money to send some books to some people if they have them, if they don't have them.
And we got a podium and a loudspeaker, which we're doing right now.
Yeah. So, but know that you're more powerful than you realize, than they want you to think. Lucha Dandy also says, one silver lining for this is that most people will be aware of it. Heck, we might even see an influx of readers because of it. I sure hope
we can hope.
I genuinely hope so. But I'm off to do that. So I will see you guys next time with another episode of the Source Exchange. Thank you for permitting us to talk a little bit politically. I don't want to talk about like parties. I just wanted to talk about like this issue and whether it is something that is indicative of a larger issue. We'll see, but hopefully we can just kind of like limit it to this, because I don't want to get into that. Like I want to get into this. Like I think we can all agree book banning is bad. And if you don't agree,
it should be a non-controversial issue,
right? If you don't agree, I got no use for you. So, but I'm willing to try and change your mind. But thanks a lot for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys next time with another episode of the Elsewhere Exchange. Of course, don't forget to subscribe here for more, and visit youtube.com/CapeJoel for more Joel.
Thank you.
That's it. So long, everybody.